Welcome to AUDL Weekly. Tonight we continue our countdown to the 2022 regular season right here on the program dedicated to ultimate stories, perspectives, conversations, and more. I'm Evan Lepler, and we've got a tremendous show for you this evening. The head coach of the Minnesota Wind Chill, Ben Feldman, will be here. So will Adam and Daniel, of course, for hopefully more of a spirited disc debate than last week when they agreed on everything. We'll see about that this week. And later on, Matt Smith is back with a new episode of Upline and Out of Bounds, featuring up-and-comer from Tampa Bay, Tannen Hedges. But first, if you haven't already heard, the AUDL is going international. All the details coming up on a beautiful day for a toss. You're watching AUDL Weekly on AUDL.tv, so stick around. All right, welcome back. 10 days from now, the AUDL will be televising a pair of unique ultimate exhibition showcases in Medellin, Colombia. This will be part of TEP, or Torneo Eterna Primavera, which is a famous South American Frisbee tournament that'll be taking place next week in Medellin. Perhaps you already have heard the news. The league announced it on Monday. I wrote a little bit more about it on Tuesday. The Los Angeles Aviators will take on a Latin American All-Star team, which includes former AUDL All-Star Hawk Jimenez. And then New York and DC will battle under the lights in Colombia. Both these games will be broadcast live on AUDL.tv. And both games will be filled with stars. There's some really great rosters of top players heading down from the U.S., the Latin American team, they'll have players representing a half dozen or so different countries. That roster will include 3 players with AUDL experience, obviously Jimenez being the headliner, but also former Seattle Cascade Daniel Montoya and former Tampa Bay Cannon Hector Ordonez. Frankly, the international flavor in the AUDL over the years might be one of the most underrated stories in our league. Most every year since I've been involved with the league starting in 2014, various teams have brought over different dudes from all around the world who proceeded to ball out here in North America. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but just kind of off the top of my head, guys that immediately come to mind, solid performers from outside the US or Canada. I mean, you got to start with Montreal's French imports, Steve Bonneau, Quentin Bonneau, Sasha Płatzakolski. Apologies for the poor pronunciations, but I'm trying. Toronto has had a slew of international players, bringing over Great Britain star Justin Ford. Rush have also had Dutch teenager Benjamin Ort when he was just 18 years old. Also Japanese cutter Akifumi Morioka, who was a very important player from them a few years back. Last year, we saw the New York Empire bring over Nasser Mbaye-Vogel, the European legend who immediately had a great moment launching a picture-perfect huck on what I believe was his first touch ever for the Empire. We've seen plenty of Colombians, already mentioned Jimenez and Ordonez, Esteban Ceballos, Mauricio Martinez in Montreal. Last year, the Cannons had 4 Colombians, including Ordonez, on their 2021 roster. You think about Seattle, they had Montoya, but also John Doherty from Ireland. San Diego went to championship weekend with Japanese import Yosenda back in 2019. Then there was Christian Guerrero back in 2015 from the Philippines with the San Jose Spiders. So I'm rambling a bit. Obviously, I could go on. I'm sure I'm forgetting to mention a bunch of guys, and I apologize for that. But man, it's been a special dynamic over the past decade to see players from all around the world making the AUDL after watching it from their home country and then aspire to make the league and then show up to tryouts and deliver. That's pretty cool. And all of this is part of what makes it so exciting to be traveling to Medellin next week. You never know who might be exposed to Pro Ultimate for the first time, what teenager might see these showcase games, develop an ultimate dream that they can then pursue, and who knows, maybe a decade from now I'll be telling some of those stories on this very program. Cool to think about those possibilities. All right, coming up next, the Minnesota Wind Chill are the presumptive favorite in the AUDL Central Division for this upcoming season. I'll ask Ben Feldman if his team is worthy of that preseason praise. We're just getting started here on AUDL Weekly. My first guest this week on AUDL Weekly is the head coach of the Minnesota Wind Chill, Ben Feldman. Ben, welcome back to the program. How are you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to chat with you. There's a lot of hype around the 2022 Minnesota Wind Chill, and I want to ask you straight up, is that hype warranted?
We're excited. We're excited for the season. We obviously got a couple new pieces and parts and a lot of returners from last year. So there's definitely a good energy going up here in Minnesota. Excited to finally get outside and get some outdoor reps. And we're excited. I think we're just under 5 weeks out from the first game and working hard and a little bit longer lead up to the season this year than last year with the ability to practice a little sooner and with a few less COVID restrictions. So there'll be a lot of pent up energy and excitement once we actually take the field next month. So everyone's really looking forward to it.
And it's interesting to hear you say that because I've talked to a lot of coaches and some are saying, like you said, we have a lot more time to prepare. And other coaches have told me that, look, last year we had time to prepare before the season and there was nothing else going on. There was no college ultimate. There was no club ultimate. Players were still living at home, working from home. Now things are a whole lot busier. But yeah, that's interesting you say that. You guys went 10-2 last year. In what ways do you think your 2022 team can be better than the team that went to the playoffs last year?
Man, I mean, I think just experience playing the league. We had some rookies or players maybe who hadn't played in a few seasons involved last year. So I think that experience and just of those 12 games in that season and getting some of those guys who haven't had a ton of experience in the AUDL, that experience I think is really valuable. So obviously we have a few new tools and lost a few players, picked a few others up. We got obviously Quinn Snyder back, who was with us back in 2019. That's exciting, and some other additions as well. But I think it's just experience with the field, the league. Like we've been repping so many time end of quarter scenarios, like what to do in these different situations, and that's something that these guys in college and club, that part of the game is just so far-fetched. It's not you just got to score the point, right? There's nothing else to it. Score the point. That's all you got to do is try to score. And in the AUDL it's a little bit different sometimes. So it's been really good. And again, it's just the experience factor. The more reps we can get in front of a crowd, high intense competitive environments, the better we're going to perform in those moments going forward.
I appreciate how aggressive you and the Wind Chill have been in bringing in new players over the course of the past few seasons. Many of them have worked out nicely, including the Canadian contingent led by Quinn Snyder, and I want to talk about him in a moment. But first, I want to ask you about the two guys that played for Dallas last year, Abe Coffin and Sam Ward. What's the story about bringing those guys from the Lone Star State to the North Star State?
Yeah, we're excited. Suds, or Sam, was a little bit of a late addition, just reached out kind of late into the tryout process and was able to come up. And he's obviously super motivated. Commuter. He's always kind of been a commuter, obviously, playing Ultimate when he was playing with Dallas as well. But we're excited to bring his firepower, energy, and spunk to the team. And he's been obviously not just a great on the field, but also a really good culture fit with the team. And Abe is someone who I would say years ago we knew he's a Minnesota sports fan. He's got some family history up here, and he's big Vikings, Twins, and we've been trying to get him to do some games when he's in town for practice to give him that part of the Wind Chill experience. But he's an extremely talented player. It's been good. We've had most of these out-of-towners in town for I'd say 4 or 5 of our practice weekends this preseason, which is tremendous. And obviously a lot of that chemistry is going to happen throughout the course of the season as we kind of work our way towards hopefully a playoff run. But it's exciting. It's always fun for our local players and guys to be able to interact with these out-of-towners in this way, because typically when you're playing club, you might have a few ringers involved from other cities, but I don't know, to have them involved in our game day and them committing all that time traveling in the weekends to be here, it means a lot, and it creates a really fun and competitive environment at practice. So starting to build that chemistry, which is great, and we're excited to have both those guys involved on our side, not on the opponents in May.
Well, Abe Coffin has gone to championship weekend with two different teams, the Madison Radicals and the Dallas Roughnecks, now the Dallas Legion. When you've gotten to coach him in practice, what has it been like integrating Abe's skill set into your system, and what role do you envision him playing when you guys take the field in May?
Yeah, he's obviously, when you're playing with a brand new group of players, the immediate reaction from our players is just like, this guy is so easy to play with. Like, he can basically do everything. And I think as he's gotten more and more comfortable just in our practice weekends, he's touching the disc more, he's asserting himself more. So as any player normally would, trying to kind of work their way, figure out where they fit into the roster. But he's gonna. It's going to play to our benefit. We want Abe touching the disc a lot, that's for sure. Abe with the disc is going to lead to a winning recipe for us, and he's a great threat to complement a lot of our other existing players. And he's extremely versatile, and we're excited to see kind of where that molds into. But with having the disc in Abe's hand, making plays is what he's good at, and we'll make sure we give him that opportunity.
We're excited to see that too, and obviously his versatility is a benefit. And there was a question last year, initially at the start of the season, who are your offensive handlers going to be? And then we saw Andrew Roy and Will Brandt and Tony Poletto, and then you're like, how are they going to fit Josh Klain back into this mix? And now I wonder how you're going to fit Abe Coffin into that mix. I guess it's a good problem to have, is it?
Yeah. And with anything, injuries and conflicts and things, like having the ability to have a more flexible rotation. Obviously, we got some guys still wrapping up college here with the season starting sooner. So in May, we'll probably have a few different looks in our 3 or 4 games, just based on existing conflicts, college nationals, things like that, where we might not have our standard rotation. But hopefully getting over some little nagging injuries across our roster too. Nothing serious, thankfully. But when healthy, obviously we got some difficult decisions to make. And if anything, our secondary O-line that goes out there, or even the guys out on D, I mean, the offensive versatility I think we're going to have on both sides of the disc, either when we get a turnover or if it's our O-line stepping on the field. We just have lost a few pieces, but I think we added with experience, and then the pickups we made, I think we added hopefully our conversion on a turn on defense, and then obviously our probably dynamic, our ability to be a little bit more dynamic this year with some of the personnel there. Possession heavy offense last year for sure, and it worked well for us in a lot of moments, but excited to hopefully have a healthy Josh, Abe involved, and some of our other players kind of finding their way into opening up our offense a little bit too this year.
Yeah, speaking of opening up the offense, I imagine Quinn Snyder might be involved in that a little bit. We saw him kind of explode in that Chicago game, erupting for like 10 goals in the first half, it felt like. It might have been exactly that. I don't remember, but I know it was a dynamic performance. And we haven't really seen him much in the AUDL since because of the pandemic, and he's a Canadian. What has it been like integrating him back in, and how has he evolved as a player? Wasn't he just like 20, 21 years old that game in 2019?
Yeah, it's crazy to think about, but I mean, he still has so many limited reps in the AUDL. Yet I think he probably, if you put some minimum on it, he probably has one of the highest, or in history, probably the goals per game average. With this whatever 5 or 6 it is. But no, he's super motivated and excited. Obviously, he's had limited opportunities to compete at a really high level. I mean, obviously some with like Worlds tryouts and things that he's done and club opportunities, but he's very eager and excited to get back out on the stadium in front of the fans and put on a show. So he's an explosive player. I know he's going to be able to make some big plays for us, and we're excited to get him obviously back in the mold. And still extremely young, has a lot of developing to do, but he's motivated, and we're just excited that the border's back open, and he's able to join us this year. So it's been tremendous.
Well, I know we are very excited to be in Minnesota for the Week 2 game of the week. You guys get the Chicago Union in your house, and I imagine it's a game that you guys will be very much looking forward to for lots of reasons. And to wrap it up, I want to ask you about how last season ended. Clearly, you guys had a phenomenal season, going 10-2. You had a lead in the fourth quarter, and Chicago made a great comeback. You guys made some key mistakes. How have you handled the adversity of that experience over the course of the offseason in terms of turning the page towards 2022?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a team, you rule out the last few minutes of play, but I think those are the growing teams that great programs and great teams have to go through sometimes to get to where they need to be. We still have a very young roster in general relative to a lot of teams out there. And it stings, right? And as we prepare and put in all this time and effort to get ready for the 2022 season, that feeling and that pain that you go through when you just make it, us getting to championship weekend is still on the list of things to check off, and it's a huge focus for us. And when you get that close, obviously, it leaves a sour taste and hopefully gives you a little bit of extra drive as you're thinking about the reps in the weight room or the time at practice, finishing out that last sprint. And yeah, so it hasn't been forgotten, that's for sure. Everyone coming back has a lot to prove, and it starts with the first game of the season, and we take it one game at a time. But if anything, hoping the motivation is even a little bit higher, and next time through, you hope we come with a little bit more poise and obviously a little bit more motivation to come out on the other side, on the other side of the result.
One last thing to ask you about. You are taking your team to Texas this year for an interdivisional game. How did that challenge come about, and what are you most looking forward to about that experience?
Yeah, I mean, from a player perspective, the guys are always excited for new opportunities and to play other teams. And honestly, this was all in the works prior to the formal signings of it. Is now the storylines have shifted a little bit, obviously, and it's one that I think both teams will have a lot to play for. So from a overall kind of environment and motivation perspective, it's going to be fun, I think, for the fans to watch as well as the players to play in, and there won't be any shortage of desire to win on either side. I can tell you that. I know our guys and both Abe and Sam are going to be we're going to be doing everything we can for those guys, and it's going to be a fun storyline, obviously, to start the season. But obviously, with some of the division realignment and numbers, there was conversations about some cross division to add some schedule variability for the South Division, and it's something that we adjusted some things, and we obviously fly a lot as a team, so it's something we shifted some scheduling around, and we're excited to get that opportunity to play a new team, and it'll be fun to take the field down there in Dallas in just over 5-6 weeks, so it's coming up here pretty quick.
Awesome. Ben Feldman, really appreciate the time. Look forward to seeing you May 6th on that Saturday night for that Chicago-Minnesota game. Best of luck getting ready, and I'm sure we'll talk soon. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Evan.
That's Ben Feldman, the head coach of the Minnesota Wind Chill. Adam and Daniel are coming up here on AUDL Weekly right after this. I'm now joined by Adam Ruffner and Daniel Cohen. The duo hosts the Swing Pass podcast, which you can hear wherever you get your podcast. Gentlemen, welcome back. Daniel, good to see your hair is back as well. Let's jump right in. Over under this week, and let's start with topic number one, because it's a good place to start. He is averaging 29 goals per season in his 6-year career, but he only had 21 goals last year in the regular season. Over under 30 goals in the 2022 regular season for Carolina's Terrence Mitchell. Adam, get us started.
I'm going to have to go with over here. I think that Terrence was a little bit undersold in the 2021 regular season. He started the season on defense, but as you saw as the season progressed and into the playoffs, he was one of their most reliable offensive weapons last year during their championship run. He basically played clean ultimate throughout their postseason sweep. And especially with the injury news to Alan Laviolette, the all-AUDL second-teamer from the Flyers last year, I expect Mitchell to pick up a little bit more of that offensive slack in their system. I kind of expect them to lean on him now as he progresses into his veteran role in that offense. anytime you're taking the under on Terrence Mitchell, it just doesn't feel right. So I'm pretty confident in taking the over that he's going to get that goal mark in 2022.
Daniel, what you think?
I'm with you. I'm not going to take the under on Terrence. And I think it's a combo of things. One, I feel like he is maybe one of the most consistent cutters year to year, and like what he's been for that Flyers team really hasn't wavered much over the last few seasons. Like from 2017 to 2019, scored 30 plus goals all of those years. Like Adam said, he started out on D-line a bit at the start of the 2021 season for the first 2 games. So he only scored 1 goal in those games. If you get rid of those, he scored 20 goals in 9 games, which would extrapolate out to like a 27-ish goal season for a full 12-game year. I think that's a lot closer to what he can do, and I just think, again, with the Laviolette injury, they're gonna go to their core, and he is gonna be in the lineup. No more messing around with him on D-line. Terrence is playing offense, so I think 30 is a pretty easy mark for him to eclipse.
So it's easy for you to say, oh yeah, he's going to play offense, but there is a logjam of cutters, and just the case for the under, if you were to make it, Henry Fisher, Jacob Fairfax, Anders Jungst. You mentioned Alan Laviolette being up, but they still have Eric Taylor. They've got a lot of guys who can score a lot of goals, and someone in that group is not going to get to 30 goals. And last year it was Terrence.
I would say there's guys in that group that I would switch to D-line before Terrence. Terrence feels like very much a rock in that cutting core. I think guys like Fairfax and Taylor could play defense pretty competently, and I think they would be better utilized if they have to switch any cutters over. So
gotcha. Okay,
I'm team offense for Terrence.
We've seen Terrence on O-line literally since he was a teenager back in 2015 in the Flyers' first ever game. Topic number 2. DC's Joe Richards. He had 42 goals last year, but this year the other half of the J&J Roofing Company, Joe Merrill, now resides in Salt Lake. Over under 40 goals in the 2022 regular season for DC's Joe Richards. Daniel, we'll start with you this time.
This is a tough one, because on one hand, yes, half of the J&J Roofing Company has gone, and they were like the 2 guys to end all of the possessions for DC. Not too many touches between the 20s, but when they were getting the disc, it was usually in the end zone. I'm going to take a slight under. I don't think Joe Richards is really going anywhere. I just think their offense is going to be a little less predictable this season. I think it's going to be less handler heavy, looking for openings to shoot deep, but just willing to find Joe Richards or another receiver in the end zone. I think there's going to be a lot more involvement from the downfield cutters, which I think favors the new hybrids that they've added this offseason. Guys like Tyler Monroe, maybe Rico Johnson playing offense. I think there's just going to be a few more guys that can sort of round out a less predictable approach, if that makes sense. And so I feel like Joe Richards' numbers will go down a little bit. I still think 30 to 40 goals is very realistic for him. 40 just seems maybe a bit high.
Adam?
I'm going to slam that over again, and I can't believe you're going to take a wing condition like Joe Richards and just kind of disqualify him like that. I mean, Richards has gotten better, I think, in every season he's played so far. And I think when you continue to add weapons to the Breeze offensive line, as they've done this offseason, he just only seems to benefit from that. He still is kind of the clear finisher in their offense. And I think instead of complicating much of their offensive flow, they might go towards simplicity and just keep doing kind of what they were doing last year, which is go to the big man in the end zone. Richards is one of, I think, the more undersung receiving prototypes in the league right now. He hasn't really shown an ability to be slowed down, and he had a terrific game in the playoffs against the Flyers. I don't know. I just kind of expect him to continue to be one of those untalked about, almost star level players for DC in 2022. So I'll take the over on 40 goals.
Tyler Monroe going to be involved a lot downfield. Also Christian Boxley, who we've seen for DC in the past. I think he's going to get some run on the O-line too in that downfield space. But Richards, it's good. We finally have a disagreement. It's nice to have a little dissension here for the first time in a couple of weeks. Topic number 3. Only 4 players last year surpassed 4,500 throwing yards for the season. And Montreal's Jacob Brissett was not one of them, but that's in part because he did not get the full 12 games. If you extrapolate his average through the full 12 games, he would have basically right at 4,500 yards. So over under 4,500 yards for Montreal's young ambidextrous handler Jacob Brissett this year. Adam?
Look, I'm probably sitting right behind the driver of the Jacob Brissett bandwagon, but I'm going to take the slight under on this season. I think Montreal is going to have a little bit of adjusting to do as they face U.S. competition again for the first time in 2 years. I think the throwing numbers that we saw out of the Canadian Cup Series were somewhat inflated, given the relatively low level of deep defense being played by Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto. I think that's going to change when they're going to have to face a DC, a New York, and maybe even an improved Boston team. Philadelphia, too, has some pretty big, deep defenders. I just want to see a little bit more from what the Royale offense will look like, particularly that deep strike throwing attack that works so well for them in 2021, before I go saying that, yes, he's a lock to become, an essentially a top 6 thrower in the league this season.
Daniel, you're nodding.
Yeah, I'm agreeing. I mean, 4,500 is just a huge number. Obviously,
Huge number.
The only player that hit that mark without playing more than 12 games was Austin Taylor, who was hucking it more than anyone last season. I think Montreal is going to have a tough path to the playoffs, so I don't know if they get beyond that 12-game number. I like Brissett a lot, and I like how he fit into that offense, but I also feel like the Montreal offense seems to vary a lot year to year, and it's kind of hard to predict exactly what we're gonna see from them. Like Adam mentioned, new division, kind of getting back into things with the US teams. I feel like they're gonna have a little bit more trouble with their deep game success that they saw against Toronto and Ottawa, where all 3 Canadian teams were kind of on the same page. We're just gonna huck a ton every game, and I think that benefited some of their throwers. So I think 3,500, 4,000 throwing yards maybe seems plausible, but 45, I'm definitely going to take the under there.
4 guys that had over 4,500 last year: Raleigh's Saul Yannick, now Carolina. I was saying that intentionally this time, so I do not owe $1 for this one. Chicago's Pavlianis, New York's Elliot Chartok, and you mentioned Atlanta's Austin Taylor. All right, moving on to our final topic today in Over-Under. There were 12 players in the league last year that surpassed 3,000 receiving yards, including Indianapolis's Levi Jacobs, who had 12 more than 3,000. So, over under 3,000 receiving yards in the 2022 season for Indy's Levi Jacobs. Daniel?
I'm going to take the under, and it's nothing against Levi's ability, but it's really just about the re-additions of Keegan North and Cam Brock. I think they're going to make the offense a lot more balanced. I feel like we saw some weirdness where Jacobs sort of became their really main downfield threat, where I feel like he's better suited in more of a midfield hybrid role. I think Rick Gross is going to be able to get downfield a little bit more with Keegan North helping out in the backfield. So I feel like this offense is probably going to return closer to what we saw from them in 2019, where I don't think Jacobs was their primary downfield target, but I do think he's probably in for a more balanced, 2,400 yards throwing and receiving this season rather than, drastically swinging in one direction over the other.
Adam?
I hate to do it, but I'm going to go ahead and agree with him. I think he's going to be under 3,000 yards receiving, and I think that's because he's more effective as a shooter-thrower role. I think Daniel is correct with the additions of Cam Brock and Keegan North, and also the improvements of Trey Dines. I really expect a big season out of him. He looked like almost like a wide receiver 1 type in some of their offensive sets. I think Jacobs is more valuable to Indy as a thrower, kind of in that continuation role, rather than as just a strictly downfield threat, as they utilized him, as Daniel was saying, at many times, because they had so many adjusting pieces to integrate after losing most of their 2019 starting line rotation. So I expect Jacobs to facilitate more into a natural role for him, and I expect an equally big season out of him. And I'm just really excited to see how the AlleyCats stack up this year with 3 playoff bids coming back to the Central Division.
You guys both throwing shade at Indy's Levi Jacobs. Adam, I do appreciate that while you say you're in the back seat of the Brissett bandwagon, you are riding shotgun on that Trey Dines bandwagon. You are his number one fan heading into the season.
Maybe.
Alrighty. Yes, he's had some good games, and he's only going to get better. Adam Ruffner, Daniel Cohen, thanks to you both. Again, you can hear them on the Swing Pass podcast, wherever you get your podcast. Coming up next on AUDL Weekly, Matt Smith's Up, Line, and Out of Bounds, Tannen Hedges coming up.
What's up, AUDL world? We are rolling our way through the preseason, and I am joined today by another guest from around the league. Today we've got Mr. Tannen Hedges from the Tampa Bay Cannons. How's it going, Tannen?
It's going really well, Matt. Thank you for having me.
No problem. I'm looking forward to getting to know you a bit more, so we're just going to hop right here with the intro. So first question for you, Tannen. Hometown.
Hometown is Livermore, California. It's located right outside Oakland, California, on the other side of the bay from San Francisco.
Very cool. Did not know you were a West Coaster, that West Coast transplant, it seems.
Yep. It's actually I grew up in the same area that a lot of the Revolver guys, like Eli Kearns and whatnot. I would have gone to the same high school they did, so.
Very cool. Different lives, it would seem. But all right, moving on. Second question, current age.
I am 27. I actually just turned 27 earlier this month.
Cool. Did you attend college? And if you did, what degree or major did you specialize in?
Yeah, I went to the University of Alabama in Huntsville. It's in Huntsville, Alabama, but my major was biology, minor in chemistry.
Very cool. Shifting over a little bit to ultimate related stuff now. Current position on the field?
Primarily like a O-line hybrid player. So starting out behind the disc, start downfield, that kind of thing. Just that seems what the Tampa Bay has kind of been using me for last year and then also this year.
Absolutely. I was going to call you a hybrid if you didn't call yourself a hybrid, and hopefully they'll show some throwing and receiving highlights for you, which you had a few last year for sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm slow enough to be a pure handler. I'm not fast enough just to be a pure cutter, so.
Yeah, know your role then.
Exactly.
Why don't you give the audience your ultimate origin story?
Yeah, so my ultimate origin story would be the church I went to in high school. A lot of the players, some of the leaders in the church youth group actually played ultimate. So I used to play casually. And then so a lot of the people that I grew up looking up to was a guy named like Stephen Brandon, my youth pastor, Peter Dolan. Stephen actually played at the University of Auburn. And then this guy named Michael Roby, who never played college, but he played for Freaks of Nature for a long time. He actually was a big influence, but then I actually started playing organized ultimate because my sister started dating a guy and they got serious, and so she said she still wanted to spend time with me, so she signed me up for the recreational summer league. So I got into that and I basically just took off. I played club with my brother-in-law. They ended up getting married, so we ended up playing the Huntsville B team Rampage together for many years, and then they got married and kind of settled down, and I just kept trying to go up. So I played for Freaks and stuff like that, and then have been moving up ever since.
Yeah, very cool. And as a former Bama guy myself, I know some of those dudes. Shout out Stephen Brandon for 1 year on the Ironman for a little bit. So yeah. From that, from being the tag along, it sounds like, in an Ultimate Frisbee League to, this will now be your third year in the AUDL. Why don't you wrap us up and give us your favorite AUDL moment?
I would say my favorite AUDL moment would be, I would say the first time that I got called up to play for the Night Watch. It was a road trip to play the Charlotte Express and the Raleigh Flyers. And it was actually Ken Porter's last game playing for the Charlotte Express. And I guess now would be a good time to apologize. I actually took the game disc from that game. So, I mean, there's a couple, but I took one of them. And, I think as a young player, it's 7 years ago. I was like 19, 20 years old. And starting from, playing summer league and whatnot and like making the practice squad. And then the team wasn't that good. So they were trying to shift up the roster. And, finally after it was like the second to last week of the season. And so it felt like a really long time to get called up and say like, hey, you're on the roster. And I don't know. I just remember I was at my Thursday night summer league, and I was with a guy named Michael Venezia, and I got the email that I was on the roster and he was coming too. And I was like, I don't know. It's just this thrilling idea that I'm going to go play and travel with the guys and like guys with like Venez and Tom Radcliffe and Michael Voles and those kind of guys that no longer play. But that was probably it's a memory that sticks out in my mind.
Yeah, that's awesome. You love to hear stories about kind of that first call up and your introduction into the league. And I'm looking forward to watching you get a lot more playing time this year and making some big moves on the field. But now that we know you a little better, we're going to jump into today's game segment. And today's game is... we're bringing it back from last year. It's called Stat Line. The way Stat Line works is I've got 3 mystery players, all of whom played with you on the Cannons last year.
Okay.
I'm going to give you their stat line for the season of just a few key stats, and you tell me who the player is. And if you don't know, I have one additional hint per player.
Okay.
So with that, I'm just going to kick right into it. Mystery player number 1. 10 games played, 3 assists, 18 goals, and 13 blocks. I will also say it is a team leading 13 blocks.
Team leading. Okay. Can you say the stats again one more time?
Sure. 10 games played, 3 assists, 18 goals, and 13 blocks.
Ryan Chard.
Ding, 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 ding. 1 for 1. All right. Good stuff there. I didn't even have to give you the additional hint. Moving on to player number 2. 10 games played as well.
Okay.
12 assists, 20 goals, and 6 blocks.
10 games played, 20 goals.
12 assists, 20 goals, 6 blocks.
I'm going to guess this is Unmil Patel.
Ding, 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 ding. 2 for 2. You're putting it together.
The cogs are turning. I think back a little bit, but I'm putting it together.
All right, 2 for 2. We got one more here for you. Mystery player number 3. Okay. 7 games played, 28 assists, 12 goals, and 9 blocks.
Damn, this person had really good stats for that many games.
They were slinging it.
7 games. How many assists?
28 assists, 12 goals, 9 blocks.
Is this Roni?
Ding, 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 ding. 3 for 3. Mr. Tannen Hedges taking it home. That was too easy. Honestly, I think the Patel one, once you got the Patel one, that one was the tough one in my opinion.
Yeah, Umil it's hard. I was like, man, he's kind of an all-around player, and I was like, because it makes sense that Roni got hurt, so it made sense that someone with that many stats, with that few games, so all good players, all really good players. So
yeah. Well, you nailed it. 3 for 3, easy money. Unfortunately, we are out of time for today. But before we get out of here, any last minute shout outs you want to give?
I just want to give a shout out to my two guys that have been with me for the longest, Elijah Jaime and Brett Holzmeyer. I would like to say is that Brett should be the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year, if not MVP. Eli, I see you on the underrated list every year. I think if you talked more and posted more on your social media, you would be not on that list anymore. So keep working hard, guys. Keep pushing me, and I'll see you on the field.
Yeah, love to hear it, and I would agree with those statements as well. For now, we got to run, but I know I'm looking forward to seeing you on the field, both against the Hustle and against the rest of the league. But yeah, for now, back to Evan.
Thanks, Matt.
Great stuff, Matt. Thank you as always. Fun to hear from Tampa Bay's Tannen Hedges, as the Cannons certainly aspire to be one of the surprise teams in the AUDL South Division this season. That is going to wrap up our show for this evening. Hope you enjoyed it. My thanks go out to everyone involved: Adam Ruffner, Daniel Cohen, Ben Feldman, Matt Smith, Tannen Hedges, and of course, thanks to our editor extraordinaire, Luke Johnson. My name's Evan Lepler. Thank you for tuning into this edition of AUDL Weekly, and we'll talk to you right back here next Wednesday.